did it, boys! Nids finally 5-0'd a GT in the heart of the dreaded Marine meta. But how, you may ask? The answer may surprise you. That's right, we're clickbait now. What's up, folks? Welcome back to Tactical Tortoise. My name is Trevi, and today I'm hanging out playing my little bugs. I even painted them to look like my army inside the technological marvel that was Dawn of War 2, and talking about my favorite buggy boys that finally managed to 5-0 a GT last week. Before we get to it, super quick reminder about the new Patreon for Tactical Tortoise. Starting in March, patrons will get early access to new videos. There's already 2 patron-only videos up on the site, and there will be more to come in the next few weeks, so join now to get in on the ground level at patreon.com/tacticaltortoise. So anyway, the hive mind blessed galaxy brain Chad behind this undefeated record is none other than Larry Oliver, who played a mix of Hive Fleet's Behemoth and Kronos at a 64-player Coastal Wargaming GT in Midlothian, Virginia that was broadcast by the awesome folks over at Warp Charged Gaming. Coastal Wargaming did use the Adepticon mission packet, which heavily favors aggressive armies like Nids and Chaos, since it removes almost all of the focus from actually killing models and only plays the first 5 rounds of the game. So some factions that really flourish in the late game, like Space Marines, suffer heavily. As an aside, obviously this happened before the Marine nerf that took place last week. Nids are in a slightly better position after the nerfs, but still not great in my opinion, but I'm sure I'll talk about that in a future video. For now, keep in mind that we are talking about pre-nerf Space Marines. So let's talk about the list. I love this list. Larry brought a pretty standard double battalion archetype to the shindig, 1 Behemoth battalion with a Broodlord, Heavy Venom Cannon, and Scything Talon Hive Tyrant, as well as the Swarmlord, 2 20-ish strong packs of Genestealers and some Rippers to fill out the troops choice, and 1 Kronos battalion with a Quad Devourer, Hive Tyrant, and Neurothrope, 3 units of Rippers, as well as an Exocrine, a 6-strong Hive Guard brood with Impaler cannons, and a drop pod Tyrannocyte to stick one of the big shooters into if they have to get range on superior artillery. The basic framework of the list is pretty standard. I think a lot of Tyranid lists post Blood of Baal start at a similar spot. The most interesting choice is the pick of Hive Fleets, however. While normally the Genestealer battalion would come from Hive Fleet Kraken for the additional threat range and access to Chameleonic mutation, this list opts out of the 6 to 8 extra inches of threat range that Kraken brings and exchanges it for access to the +1 to wound psychic power in Unstoppable Hunger, as well as the +1 strength relic Scything Talons the size of Tyranid to go on the smashy Hive Tyrant. While Behemoth keeps the threat range up a little with innate rerollable charges, the extra hitting power does a lot to solve Tyranid's issues with heavily armored enemies. The size of Tyranid also opened the smashy Hive Tyrant to bringing a Venom Cannon in place of a second pair of Talons, which makes him a solid multi-role threat and gets him to the coveted threshold of Strength 8 when paired with the Murderous Size adaptation. Larry only had the final round of the event on stream, but in the game we saw that he used the Resonance Barb to ensure that he'd get off Unstoppable Hunger on the Broodlord, which is the hardest spell in the Tyranid discipline to cast at a warp charge of 7. Early game, Larry used Synaptic Channeling to convey that power to the smashy Hive Tyrant as well, so it could dive on hard targets and ensure wounds on 2s or 3s. Then commit the Broodlord with the Resonance Barb, who actually had the psychic power, alongside the Genestealers or Swarmlord later on in the game. Genestealers are probably the scariest target in the game for a +1 to wound effect, since their insane volume of middling strength and AP attacks benefits enormously from it, and on top of that, buffs their rending ability to trigger on 5s or 6s. So against a toughness 8 target, you can reasonably expect 20 to 25 successful wounds, all at the maximum AP of -4. Which is frankly insane. Overall, I love the list. It's awesome to see Hive Fleet Behemoth in action and seeing success, but the biggest downside is that I'm not seeing any tech directed at the Marine matchup. However, that might be okay. Now, a couple notes about the event. Firstly, it was a full-on 25% Chaos players. 16 out of the 64 players chose to bring Chaos, and, well, that's not crazy because it is a popular super faction and has a positive matchup versus Marines. It is highly unusual. It certainly helps, however, since, in my opinion, Chaos is an extremely good matchup for Tyranids, especially with how hard Deepest Shadow Bones lists relying on high-value psychic powers like Warp Time. Having Behemoth in the mix also helps smash through heavy armor portions of a Chaos list like Lord's Discordant more reliably than just hoping your Genestealers 5+ to wound doesn't crap out and have them accidentally killed by a weird Mechano Beast with a bunch of tentacles. There were still 13 Space Marine lists in the mix, but combined with a smattering of Eldar and other Tyranids, which I do think this list is favored against, and Imperial Soup, they were much less of a threat than they normally are, and with a heap of Chaos counterattack to keep them down, it might be a simple manner of dodging the matchup. So whether Tyranids was a meta call for Larry, I don't know, but I can't think of a realistic field better suited for Tyranids to do well. That was helped along by some extremely lucky matchup draws. Larry played against an interesting Warp Talon and Chaos Knight hybrid in round 1, Magnus and Morty with Triple Lords Discordant in round 2, Magnus and Morty again, this time with Thousand Sun friends in round 3. Larry got a mix-up in round 4 playing against Eldari Heavy Armor, featuring 6 Wraith Lords and Wraith Seers and 9 Talos, and then in the final round against Triple Lord of Skulls. Well, there were some tough lists in there. I consider almost all of them favored, or at least highly playable for Tyranids, which certainly helped. That said, I definitely think the Adepticon missions guided the meta's faction choices into ones that Nids prey on more easily, so Larry's plethora of good matchups isn't actually that surprising. Still, dodging every Marine player on the way up is a pretty big brain pro gamer move. Unfortunately, I don't think the list does as well in ITC. It can play most of the field pretty well, but will get blown off the table by Marines, who are realistically the only threat that should be teched for in the current meta. I'm very interested to see what the new packet does to that dynamic, however, with lots of buffs to secondaries that help out bugs and other Horde armies. I'm hoping that Frontline can start to undo the insane meta damage that GW caused with the Marines release. I actually really want to play this army, but staring down the barrel of 3 games in a row versus Astartes in any tournament I go to makes it less appealing, but in alternative formats where sitting back and shooting is less optimal, I think it can be incredible. So anyway, that's the sick list that went 5-0 at Coastal Wargaming. What do you think of this type of list? Is it something that you'd run in a tournament? Let me know down in the comments and post up about your Nid experience so far in 2020. Has the Marine Menace got you down? And have you played Nids with the 2020 packet and against the newly nerfed Space Marines? If so, how'd you do? Let us know and let's talk about how to get Nids back to winning this season. Remember to drop a like and subscribe if that's the kind of thing you're into, and as always, happy wargaming, folks.